and eventually went up to like 220 pounds. I just listened to what he said about get as big as you possibly can, so that's what I did.
What's up, guys? Derek, moreplates.com. Today we're going to be talking about Christian Bale's body transformation for Batman and what I think he took or did specifically to prepare for that role. While there are some absolutely nuts body transformations out there among celebrities, I don't think anyone has as many that are as staggering as Christian Bale. He has probably is easily in the top 3 of, most incredible body transformations. And the number of times he's done them puts him, at the top easily among anyone who's had to just completely transform themselves, like gaining upwards of 100 pounds going from the Machinist to the first Batman movie, and then going back down for other roles. Like he's gone from emaciated to jacked, back to emaciated, and back to jacked like several times now. And it's not just a matter of, oh, let's go on a cut, let's go on a bulk. It's literally, let's starve myself into malnourishment and look like I'm on the brink of dying, all the way to this guy's jacked as fuck and probably goes to the gym every day. So going to the beginning though, like a lot of people have asked me, is this body transformation possible naturally? Going from the Machinist in particular is the most staggering of body transformations, because he went from in 2004 in the Machinist to Batman Begins in 2005. He actually gained over 100 pounds to prepare for that role. And he actually had to go on a minor cut after that ridiculously hefty bulk in order to kind of come into a leaner body composition for his role as Bruce Wayne. And obviously that's a staggering amount of weight to gain in such a short period of time, and most people would assume off the bat 100% indicative of steroid use. And honestly, it's not completely irrational to assume, but I just want to give you some reference material here that may make you think one way or the other. Going back to the beginning, we can get a reference point of his genetic baseline in his 20s, and it gives us a more accurate representation of what he is capable of achieving on a regular progression before these crazy transformations really were part of his requirements for him. Because realistically, he imposes these upon himself. He doesn't actually really have anyone tell him you need to literally malnourish yourself into the ground until you're about to die. He kind of takes it upon himself to really own these roles and do the best he can to portray the character as he feels appropriate. So this is just a testament to his being a great actor pretty much. But going from his progression in his 20s to his 30s, we get a better reference point of actual accrual of mass over the years and what it sort of looks like on his frame before any of these crazy transformations. So at 23 years old in Metroland, we can see his genetic baseline. It's just a skinny dude, doesn't work out, nothing really significant that's worth noting. And moving to 25 years old though, you can already see in a Midsummer Night's Dream in 1999, he's packed on a decent amount of size. He looks like he has about 15 pounds more muscle, to be honest, than the previous role. So this is way back in the day before he's known for Batman, before he's known for American Psycho, before he was known for The Machinist, before he's known for any of his more recent transformations too. He looks good here, don't get me wrong. Like he's actually like visible abs, relatively muscle bound for being a reasonably untrained individual. I don't know what his commitment to diet and training was at this point, but I think he has a good foundation here within 2 years, going from a rail kid pretty much, even though he's 23, he literally just looks like a rail teenager, to a decent amount of mass and visible abs in A Midsummer Night's Dream. And then going to American Psycho at 26 years old, this is where his physique actually really peaks in his career, in my opinion, as far as just general mass appeal. Like this is the leanest he's been. Okay, not the leanest he's been with muscle on his frame, not the leanest he's been relative to emaciated roles like the Machinist. But in American Psycho, he looks awesome. He's like single digit body fat percentage. He's apparently 178.5 pounds in this role. And he talks about what went into the preparation for this role actually. And we get a good reference point of, did he train for this role? How hard did he train? What kind of went into it exactly?
Physically, it was essential. It wasn't just the vanity of an actor that Bateman have a six-pack and all of that. He talks about it. He's incredibly narcissistic. So, I had to work out like crazy for that.
So all but brief, he talks about how he had to work out like crazy to achieve this body composition. And if you've ever seen the movie and you've seen his physique, especially his morning workout routine prep, you can see the guy looks great. The guy is literally like fitness model body composition. He has jutting out six pack, not a four pack, like visible six. He is single digits. He has good deltoid development, good tricep, good arms, good chest, good well-rounded physique. And honestly, he has good genetics in my opinion, going back to the role at 25 and then moving just a year later to, well, even if we look at the baseline at 23, moving to 26, the amount of muscle he's packed on in those 3 years, even some of them being not even really attempting to peak his physique for a role within the short time frame of year to year, 25 to 26 years old, peaking for American Psycho, he made some pretty drastic changes to his physique. And in my opinion, this is actually my favorite physique of his, of all the roles, although a lot of people will really prefer the Batman look with a bit more mass, although a bit more body fat. It's a bit more of a, I guess, widespread appealing and achievable body composition, whereas the American Psycho look would be very difficult to sustain year round. With that being said, a lot of people don't look at this as a reference point when they're considering the Machinist transformation to Batman. The American Psycho movie, he looks awesome. He's not peeled, but he's very, very lean, and anybody would be happy with this body composition. And moving forward to his later roles, we can see stuff that he wasn't even really trying to peak for. He still looks pretty good. Now moving to a year later in Laurel Canyon, we can see that he's basically just gained a bunch of fat. He hasn't gained any size. He's obviously fallen off his workout regimen because he's not trying to play Patrick Bateman anymore. The thing is though, is that, you can still see some development. He hasn't completely lost all of his gains to the point where you would assume he's on cycle versus off cycle. I think honestly, he's just not training anymore and he's gained a substantial amount of fat. So it's not making him appear as athletic and as lean and as muscular, when in reality, he's probably lost maybe 4 to 5 pounds of muscle and then just gained a bunch of fat on top of it. And that's why it gives him that skinny fat kind of look that he has in Laurel Canyon. Because in American Psycho, you have to consider it's not like he's massive. He's barely cracking 180 pounds. He's in the high 170s, but he's just really lean. So you can see all the muscular detail that you wouldn't see otherwise, but he's definitely not big by any means. And going to Reign of Fire in 2002 at 28 years old, he's packed on a bit more size again. And he's actually starting to look closer to his American Psycho role, I think. He's not as lean again, but he's definitely packed on some size on his chest. He's progressed since Laurel Canyon. This is indicative of getting back in the gym, but it certainly is not some crazy transformation that's indicative of steroid use, in my opinion. And then going to Equilibrium at 28 years old, he's apparently 185 pounds in this role. And he looks good too, just like in Reign of Fire during the same year. They're about the same weight, and his body composition is similar to American Psycho, but a bit more fat and similar muscle mass. I don't think he's probably not working out as aggressively as he was for American Psycho, where he really had to peak for that to portray the ideal narcissist who's obsessed with his looks and whatnot. So this guy really owns whatever he's doing. So if he's not required to do something, he won't. But when he has a goal in mind, he goes all out about it. And honestly, I think up to now, this is all natural progression in my opinion, with just decent genetics. Now moving forward to the Machinist at 30 years old, this is the movie everyone references as the baseline of reference points for transformations going to Batman, when they've kind of disregarded his entire progression in his 20s. The Machinist is not this guy's baseline foundation of muscle tissue. This guy has gone out of his way to deprive himself to the point where he's portraying an emaciated character on purpose. And he stated this multiple times. He lost over 55 pounds for this role. I think he says in an interview it was around 56 pounds, which I'll cut the clip in later for the exact measurement, as I can't recall off the top of my head, but it was something insane like that. And he went out of his way to literally starve himself on below like bikini competitor level calories for a long span of time to reach this ridiculously malnourished body composition.
It feels great. It feels like a kind of a victory, because I did kind of just emaciate and destroy myself.
How much weight did you lose for the Machinist?
63 pounds.
If you went out of your way to the point that he did, it's obvious that you're going to lose muscle mass. Like, this is not representative of his foundation. It's not representative of how much muscle he would be holding at a reasonable diet model. This is representative of what he went out of his way to lose by literally depriving his body of everything and making himself pretty much, I would imagine this guy is in like a state of health crisis for the duration of this filming process from how much he's malnourished his body. This is not healthy, which goes without saying, but in addition to that, it's certainly not representative of what his body is capable of. Like, this is going out of your way to gain muscle is one thing, but going out of your way to lose muscle is another thing too, and both are not necessarily representative of what your body's natural homeostatic maintenance is. If it were be eating maintenance calories and just being comfortable, trying to maintain a healthy balance, this is not, neither are indicative of what his baseline is, and I believe his baseline is closer to what we saw in his mid-20s prior to peaking for American Psycho. So now moving forward from The Machinist to Batman Begins, in 5 months supposedly he gained over 100 pounds and actually overshot his goal, which was to gain as much size as possible. They told him to gain as much mass as possible for the role, and he actually ended up getting a bit too fat by rebounding and just gaining tons of weight. So this is the transformation that everyone says. It's got to be gear, it's got to be this, it's got to be that. And when you actually look at his baseline, like we said, he was in the 170s in his 20s with a relatively lean foundation with some level of muscle on his frame. He wasn't small, he wasn't jacked by any means, but without really trying, he looked pretty damn good. And then when he did try for American Psycho, he was near 180 pounds, shredded. To most people would, perceive that body composition as actually shredded. So here in Batman Begins, he's 190 pounds. When he finally came into his own and his body reached a homeostasis after he overshot his weight, he went up to something like 220 pounds after rebounding from The Machinist. But you have to realize that your body has downregulated your metabolism to such a ridiculous extent that you rebound like crazy. It's just trying to store calories at that point. It's literally just like clamoring for survival at this point. Rebounding 100 pounds doesn't mean even close to half of that was pure muscle. A lot of it's just going to be intramuscular, glycogen retention, water, all these things that you would otherwise be able to deplete. Like, there's guys who deplete like 20 pounds of water over the course of a couple days for a weigh-in. Like, a lot of this weight is just temporary fluctuating weight, amount of actual contractile tissue that's been gained over the course of cutting down from The Machinist. A lot of that is just depleting his body of temporary reserves, as well as a significant amount of actual muscle and actual fat, and then gaining the significant amount of weight for Batman Begins. A lot of it is just inflating and overspilling those temporary reserves, inflating and overspilling his glycogen stores, inflating intramuscular water retention, inflating pretty much everything over and above what one would need at a comfortable homeostasis, and then spilling over into fat storage, as well as a significant amount of muscle gain. But keep in mind, his weight is only 190 pounds, trying to gain as much muscle as possible. And when you actually look at his body composition in Batman Begins, you could argue that the majority of that weight is actually just close to fat. If you actually compare his physique in Batman Begins to American Psycho, he's only 12 pounds heavier, and about 8 of those pounds looks like fat to me. Like, it doesn't look like he's definitely not the same body fat percentage he was in American Psycho. He was much leaner in American Psycho, and he's bigger, but it's not necessarily purely contractile tissue. A lot of it is fluff weight. So I don't think he really gained a whole lot, to be honest. Like, this transformation is staggering, don't get me wrong, but when it actually gets to the nitty gritty of what is being gained here, lean, dry, contractile tissue wise, it's not a significant amount. It's like maybe 4 to 5 pounds of actual muscle tissue at most, in my opinion. Just on the surface, when you look at the actual statistics, gaining 100 pounds, or even if it was 50 pounds, it's such a short time frame, and a significant amount of it being muscle mass, and still maintaining a fairly lean body composition by the end of the transformation. A lot of people might assume, okay, well, you can't gain, 50 pounds of muscle in 5 months or even a few years. So how could you argue that this is natural? The reality is that Christian Bale just built up a bank of myonuclei and is able to bounce back once adequate stimuli and sufficient calories are reintroduced. So I'm sure you've heard of muscle memory, and this is exactly what muscle memory is that allowed him to get back to his genetic baseline and then, push past that and then gain more muscle above and beyond that would at that point be progression that is a bit more uncharted territory, and is why once you get to that point, the progression is a bit more, representative of natural progression of nearly parallel increase in muscle and fat at the same time, but getting back to the genetic baseline is really, really easy actually. And this is why he was able to bounce back and gain so much lean tissue so quickly. Muscle memory is a phenomenon in the human body where in the accrual of myonuclei is permanent, meaning even if you are sidelined by an injury, you just stop training and dieting correctly in general, or you're inevitably going to lose size in any of those scenarios. But the thing is, any progress you've made in the past, so all the muscle he's gained for, American Psycho, he's built up over the years of adulthood, just in his 20s, as a teen, in his 20s as well, the myonuclei remains there, regardless if you, injured yourself, regardless if you malnourished yourself to the point of playing an emaciated, 120-pound character in a movie, the myonuclei is still there. So this is why once you go back into a calorie surplus and get back in the gym, you can gain that size back very quickly because it never really disappeared to begin with. The cells are still present, and it is essentially up to you to induce hypertrophy in them again to get back to where you left off. So this is where taking a full advantage to gain as much myonuclei in your youth when your endogenous androgen production is peaked is as critical as possible, and is also essentially the main reason why Christian Bale is able to gain back all that lost size in such a short time frame in what seems to be a completely unreasonable statistic of before and after weight, but it's actually not that unreasonable when you actually consider the science behind it. So to me, this is not indicative of steroid use. And moving forward, he depletes himself again for the movie Rescue Down in 2006, where he goes all the way down to 135 pounds. And there he is again, nearly emaciated looking, super, super thin, super malnourished, super deprived of everything you would need to maintain muscle tissue. He's gone out of his way to lose it again, not to the extent of the Machinist, but he's, lost a ton of size. And then again, he bounces right back in 2008 for The Dark Knight at 34 years old. He's 190 pounds again, and he's gained all his size back. But his actual body composition, has it ever actually improved since American Psycho? Moving forward to The Fighter in 2010, he's 36 years old. He's 135 pounds again, apparently. And then moving forward to 2012 at 38 years old in The Dark Knight Rises, he's up to 199 pounds. But again, looking at his body composition, all of the Batman movies, none of them are significantly better than American Psycho at 26, which was pretty much, I think, him essentially peaking in terms of actual muscle growth and, being lean. And what the saying when people say, oh, when you're natural, you can only pick between two things. You can be big and soft, or ripped and small, or something like that, but you can't have both. It's basically like saying you can't be shredded and huge at the same time. It's impossible if you're natural. And honestly, I think Christian Bale's a good example of that. For an average, maybe slightly above average genetics, nothing insane, but definitely decent genetics. When he gains weight and he bulks up, he gains fat in parallel to muscle. It's not like there's some disproportionate amount of lean tissue gain with a relative absence of fat mass. He's gaining a very natural amount of fat relative to the amount of muscle growth he's achieving. And same when he loses weight, he seems to lose muscle as well as, lose fat. It's not like any of this, in my opinion, is indicative of steroid use. And while you could argue, obviously, if he's so dedicated to roles and doing the best he can to achieve the transformations, why would he not? He's obviously, shown many times he's willing to sacrifice his health in the short term to achieve such crazy body transformations. And I think that's a very, very good point and should be acknowledged, and would certainly contribute to the likelihood that he maybe did take something. In what I'm seeing based on the progression over the years and what his body composition looks like before and after these bulks and these cuts, if you can even call it that, these just like ridiculously massive fluctuations in weight, the amount of actual lean tissue gain is still within the realms of natural progression, in my opinion. So take from that what you will. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you think these were all natural transformations, or do you think that some of them weren't? If so, what red flag did you see, and where, which transformations in particular did you think were enhanced, and why? Any and all comments are welcome because they help the algorithm, so it's much appreciated when you guys drop them down below, as well as liking the video. That really helps too, and it's very much appreciated when you guys do that. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell if you want to get notified when I post, because you got to do both now, so please do that. Click on the newsletter link, video description below, if you want to get notified when I publish articles. They're far more in-depth than my videos and concise subsections with table of contents broken down with clinical studies and scientific references that I delve into that you can look into further yourself for your own personal research if you're interested in some of my more pharmacology intensive videos that I post. Also support and check out any of the companies I formulate for or am affiliated with in the video description below, like Gorilla Mind Nootropics and my turnkey pre-workout formula, vertical diet, anything and everything that supports the channel and keeps it growing. It's much appreciated when you guys do that. Thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.